Hello, and welcome to the mill. I am your host, Dusty Crane, and this week we are talking the Stonemaier Design Day. If you're like me, you've heard of Stonemaier Design Day, but maybe you haven't had a chance to attend. Of all things Stonemaier, this one seemed the most steeped in mystery. It's not that the information isn't out there, it's that it's largely out there as presented by Stonemaier. The pictures look good, the description of the day looks good, but is it all sunshine and rainbows? I'll be honest with you. When Jamey invited me to St. Louis for Design Day, I was almost as excited to attend solely to answer those questions as I was to actually participate in a design day and see what it's all about. Now, maybe you're not like me, which means you're in the camp that has attended, or maybe you're of those who didn't know this existed. Stonemaier Design Day is an opportunity for designers to bring their prototypes to other designers and gamers who are looking to play games that are still a work in progress. The idea is to provide a space and time for those two audiences to combine for the sake of the community. Jamey has signed a title from that day, but that's not really what the day is about. So I figured the best way to sort of attack this video was to just sort of explain my experience. I was excited to Design Day after the first emails to attendees went out, so my experience is a tad abbreviated. About 2 months before the event, I got a brief email from Joe with some information for designers, such as you need to register your game with Stonemaier. It has to have been play tested at least a few times, and it needs to not be so far along that the process of play testing is irrelevant. Furthermore, there was some work to determine whether there would be demand for an in-person game day, sans Stonemaier staff, it's kind of a fan-run thing, so there was an action item here. Super quick, toss a little bit of information into a Google spreadsheet, easy peasy, that was it. The next email came a month later, letting attendees know that there would be a vaccine requirement to attend. If you were unwilling to either vaccinate or provide proof, then you could get a full refund for your ticket. If that wasn't a roadblock for you, though, it was time to start getting affairs in order. We were asked to sign an attendance sheet, and we were provided with a list of games that would be prototyping and available to play, along with a description and estimated game times, weights, etc. Some designers provided links to the rules to play their games, though it wasn't necessary to read ahead of time. They were teaching them prior to gameplay. I didn't do the best time of watching those timelines, and so I signed up to playtest a little later than I should have. It would turn out fine, but I would recommend that you act on those emails that Joe sends soon after they arrive to ensure the greatest chance of getting a spot at the table for a game that sounds interesting to you. The third, and presumably what was meant to be the last email, was really the meat and potatoes of the day. It described when to arrive, food and drink details, where to park, what to do if a designer doesn't show up to demo their game, etc. There was a lot of information in that third email, and it concluded with instructions to let Joe or Jamey know if there were any disputes or frustrations. The fourth email arrived the Thursday before Design Day. It was a notification that the city of St. Louis had instituted a mask mandate that all attendees would be required to wear a mask indoors unless eating or drinking. Previously, guests were not required to wear a mask due to the fact that all attendees were vaccinated and provided proof. However, the mandate changed that option, and we were all asked to mask up. We've been doing it for almost 2 years now, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But let's get to Design Day. I rented a place near Pieces with my son, and we ended up being close enough to walk, so we did just that. It seemed sort of perfect to have the St. Louis Arch rising up over the horizon as we walked inside Pieces. Jamey was greeting people at the door while Joe was checking vaccine cards. Design Day starts promptly at 9:15 a.m., so we were asked to arrive between 8:30 and 9, particularly if you wanted coffee and bagel, as I did. Now, this is the part where I mentioned I got to signing up for things a little late. My son and I didn't have anything to do after lunch, but an opportunity to play test a game dropped into our lap, so we jumped at it. We playtested a game called AP, which cleverly stood both for Analysis Paralysis and Andrew's Prototype. It was a combo deck builder worker placement game that was remarkably clever and fun to play. If Andrew ever gets this game published, I will be one of the first in line to pick it up. We had a lot of fun with it. After playing Andrew's game, I told my son to keep an eye on tables that had an orange flower up on the flower pot on their table, and to hop into any game that was looking interesting, or any game that looked interesting that was looking for players. The flower pot is a way for designers to indicate that they need or want more players at the table. I took the opportunity to grab some more footage, which I've been sharing here as seems fitting. If I wasn't filming, though, at any time that we weren't scheduled to play a prototype, we could grab a game off the shelf at pieces and play whatever we wanted. I know that library of games usually comes at a cost, so it was nice to have that be an option that was just available to attendees at no additional cost. Lunch rolled around, and my understanding is that it was different than in years past. This year, it was quesadillas, and they were fantastic. They were both meat eater and vegetarian options, naturally, and all throughout the day, you could stop at the bar and pick up a vast array of cookies, and they were great. In fact, after lunch, you could pick up a drink at the bar if you wanted to, and I did. After lunch, we had 2 games scheduled to play. One was Teamsters of Tortured Space by Scott Scribner, and the other was John Watson Simulator by B.J. Gailey. Teamsters of Tortured Space is described officially as action drafting, pick up and deliver, and race, and that is perfectly described. There's a board of actions that you draft from, so the turn that you take this turn may be the turn someone else takes a few turns later. It's not exactly the case, though, because the cards are double-sided, so you'll play your turn, and then you put the card back into availability, but on the B side instead of the A. Now, this game also had a really cool mechanic in not only are you trying to use these cards to move around the board and raise and lower the cost of cargo, and your opponents are delivering that you and your opponents are delivering through space, you're also trying to avoid a magnetic cloud that is maneuvering around the board that could suck up your spaceship. I don't want to give away too much, but I'll just say that it was a lot of fun trying to manipulate that magnetic nebula to head into different directions away from your ships and into others. The table talk was a lot of fun too. The action cards had some really entertaining flavor text, and before long, many of us were cursing or blessing the Nebulunies for their assistance in our turns. The third and final game that I played was John Watson Simulator. It was a programmed movement and bluffing game. You are all John Watson moving around a board where clues are randomly generated, and you have to hand out cards trying to maneuver Watson around the board of these clues. You have 3 options on every card, but the one in the middle is mandatory. You have dice which represent your hidden information, and the first card you'll play can be manipulated to take the top action if you have a die with the number 1, and you can take the bottom action if you have a die with the number 2. However, this is hidden information. Your dice are covered. You know what they are, but others don't. This is where the bluffing comes in. If you lied and your bluff is called, you lose one of your die. You only have 6, so bluffing or even honest play going forward is going to be more difficult without those dice. So you have to walk a fine line of knowing when to bluff, when to call somebody out. Personally, I do not enjoy action programming games because I feel like I take a really long time to put a turn together, but I rather enjoyed this as the bluffing aspects made the table really fun too. Now, I personally would have a problem calling someone I didn't know a liar or calling their bluff. My son, though, he had no such problem, and I believe he was right every time he called. At one point, he called another player out, and it was her only bluff. She jokingly yelled at him, "You couldn't just let me have this one, could you, Josh?" And she threw him both middle fingers. We all laughed, but it turns out BJ made a programmed movement game that I actually enjoyed. In that playtest, we learned that we were playing with a rule modification recommended in an earlier playtest. And therein lies one of the coolest parts of Design Day so far as I can tell from a designer standpoint. They're getting feedback that can be acted on in the very next game if their game permits it, of course. In John Watson Simulator, the clues provided have a numeric value. In an earlier playthrough, this was hidden information. In our playthrough, this information was made public. In some cases, your cards may allow you to reach 1 or 2 clues, and now that you know the value, you may decide to pursue one over the other. This also creates the possible conflict of multiple John Watsons going after the same clue, which may result in you getting bumped out of your space. So it adds a risk-reward element too. Yes, you are in pursuit of a higher value clue, but your opponent may be too. It was cool to see the designers able to act on some of that feedback that quickly. That was my last scheduled event of the day. Joe approached my son and I and said a table was looking for one more player, but it was a long game. I told him to go for it because I wanted to try and catch Jamey for a quick conversation on camera about design days of past, present, and whether this event has a future. Our conversation turned out to be lengthier than expected, which is why I'm going to share the interview in full next weekend. After talking to Jamey, we headed back inside, and I had a first-time experience of someone calling out that they liked the mill. Now, yes, Design Day is a Stonemaier event, and the mill is a Stonemaier-sponsored channel, and if there was ever a single place on Earth that someone would know who I am without having met me, it was here. But it was still a super cool experience. I stepped over to the table. We chit-chatted for a few. Also got to meet Carlos and Rob from Beans and Dice podcast. There's a lot of content being created around our hobby, so I was unfamiliar with the show, but it became very quickly apparent that these guys have a real passion for the hobby and a playful camaraderie that you can find listening to the Secret Cabal podcast, for example. Carlos showed me some of the equipment they use and how they actually can have live call-ins on their show. It was really cool. Now, if you made it this far, I want to tell you one of the coolest things about Design Day if you're a diehard Stonemaier fan like I am. It's the getting to hang out with the Stonemaier team and some of the people who've helped make Stonemaier Games the company we know and love today. Jamey, Joe, Alex, they're all just working the room and all up for signing stuff, except Joe. I could not pin him down for an autograph. I told him he was crucial to this stuff too, but he refused me. And I tried. Maybe someday, he told me. I guess it's like how hockey players won't touch the Stanley Cup before they've won it. Joe isn't signing anything until his name is on the box. I encountered Miles Bensky, who did art for Red Rising and Rolling Realms. I met Ben Rossett, who brought us some great games, but specifically to Stonemaier, Between Two Cities and Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig. I didn't learn until I got back to our rental that one of the people I played Teamsters in Tortured Space with was Katie Cow, the artist who did My Little Scythe. There are some people who I associate with Stonemaier that were unable to make it that I hope to see again. Hi, Jen and Jamey. But also I know Ryan Lopez, co-designer of Scythe, The Rise of Fenris, had planned on attending, but he's also a teacher and just recently moved, so it wasn't a great time for him. Overall, it's just a really cool time to hang out with friends you know and meet new friends you didn't, or maybe rub elbows with designers and artists that you admire. If you ever found yourself going, I enjoy Stonemaier stuff at least as much as Dusty, I could do the mill. First, let's talk. I'm not against letting you take over for a week, but also I think Stonemaier Design Day might be a lot of fun for you too. Every year pre-pandemic, I'd always look forward to Gen Con after I started going. Well, my friends and family know I was also dreading it because I'm very introverted and that stuff really takes it out of me. But it's so much fun to see friends that I've made there and catch up and play games, and now I'm thinking Stonemaier Design Day could be one of those events too. If you're within traveling distance to St. Louis, I really cannot recommend this event enough. It was with some trepidation. I went in with some trepidation, as I always do, but I left so energized and excited not only about next year's Design Day, but also to hopefully play these wonderful games again. Every designer I sat down across the table from was generous, kind, and fun to spend time with. I really hope they see their games realized and brought to tables everywhere because I really enjoyed each one. I can't thank Jamey and the Stonemaier Games enough for having my son and I out to St. Louis for a fantastic time. And that is all I have for you this week. I wanted to share a little Design Day information from someone who's been there, but maybe more importantly, someone who isn't part of the industry, isn't swamped, and has time to answer whatever questions you had about the day. So please feel free to toss me anything related to the trip. Travel, food, Design Day itself, whatever. Just toss those questions in the comments, and I will be happy to further shed some light on one of the yearly highlights of the Stonemaier calendar. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves and each other. Bye.